Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 26 series, Rescue the Rockies. And it is good to be back after 5 days of vacation, which was nice to have. Normally, when I talk to you about missing a span of episodes, it's travel for work, but fortunately, this was primarily rest and relaxation with family, so that was positive. But we are ready to get back into the saddle with our Colorado Rockies, who are having an outstanding 2032 season, 63-25 record as we sit here on July 11th, preparing for the first-year player draft, is the best in all of baseball. And we already have a 14.5 game lead in the National League West over the San Francisco Giants. So very well positioned to guide this team back to the playoffs as we're pursuing a third consecutive trip to the World Series and a second consecutive World Series title. And as I mentioned, the primary focus for this episode is going to be the first-year player draft. Appreciate all of the insight and input from the worldwide scouting department over the past several days. Ian and Peter Hooper specifically evaluated just about every potential choice in the class in depth, so really appreciate that. And everyone else who spent their time analyzing the class for us. We'll talk about the top selections of the members of the worldwide scouting department shortly as we go through the class. A couple high-level points. I think the general consensus is that it's not a particularly interesting draft class. And again, we're picking at 34th, the final pick in the first round. So clearly the true blue chip talent and potential is primarily off the board at this point. The other general assessment from the class is that somewhat more interest from the worldwide scouting department in the pitchers than the position players this year. That was definitely seen in many of the evaluations that we received as well. We are only going to have first and second round picks in the first 3 rounds this year. We lost our third round pick because of the acquisition of Noah Schultz in the free agent market, which given his performance and the team's performance is certainly something we would do over and over again if we had the option. But essentially, of the players we're going to be talking about here at the top of the episode, we're going to be lucky if we get 2 of them, since we've only got 2 picks before the end of the 4th round. And honestly, when we look at the mock drafts, most of the guys that we're interested in, not surprisingly, should already either be off the board or should be coming off the board in the next 20 or 30 picks. So most of these players, if we want to guarantee a shot at him, now is the time to take them. I guess mathematically, the only time that we can guarantee a shot at these players is right now, and odds are the vast majority of them will be off the board by our pick at the end of the second round, which in addition to 33 picks in the second round ahead of us, there's going to be 8 supplemental first-round picks. So a lot of time for players to come off the board, unfortunately, before we are on the clock again. And I mentioned that position players not quite as popular this year, and there's only 3 who ultimately made our short list. Interestingly, they're the 3 that we talked about in the last episode that our scout prefers. The highest on the board, according to the mock draft, is the center fielder Brett Hudson. He was expected to go 19th overall, so he's been expected to have been off the board for some time at this point. Solid-looking defensive prospect, pretty average in terms of his speed. Think he can be a good contact hitter. Average to slightly above average at everything else for the left-handed hitting center fielder, who's probably more of a natural right fielder when all is said and done. He was not ultimately on the top of anyone's list from the worldwide scouting department. But clearly, if we want Hudson, probably going to need to take him now. Center fielder Pete Lehman was a bit more popular. Scott Donovan and NS1 CLRK both like Lehman. Good-looking defensive prospect, high work ethic and baseball IQ, pretty average speed profile, and a potentially outstanding contact hitter who's average-ish to below average at everything else. Guy who's looking for almost double slot at this point, so that's not particularly attractive, but we do have money to spend this year. Lehman expected to go with the 24th pick overall, so another guy who's already expected to be off the board. And last but not least, another center fielder, Rob Pera. He's expected to go with the 3rd pick in the 2nd round. So again, a guy who is expected to be off the board by the next time we select. Pera, the choice of Dustin Durbin and NS1 CLRK, like the high adaptability and work ethic. Not as good defensively as either Hudson or Lehman in terms of his current skills, but probably the most interesting bat. Contact, gap power, both look to be well above average. Combine that with pretty good speed and an eye that we think can be above average as well. And the switch hitting outfielder is an interesting prospect. And we'll turn our attention now to the pitchers, where, as I mentioned, more interest from me, more interest from the worldwide scouting department, and most importantly, a deeper pool of potential players to pick from, although most of these guys also going to be expected to be gone before the time we make our next selection. 4 players, some of whom were mentioned by the worldwide scouting department but didn't ultimately end up with any first place votes. Starting pitcher Gabe Moody, expected to go with the 24th pick in the 2nd round. Like the high adaptability and baseball IQ, really good stamina, solid at holding on runners. Think he can throw in the high 90s. Potential 6-pitch arsenal, which is very interesting. So we think his stuff can be well above average with above average movement and control. Looking for $5.5 million, so another guy who's pretty expensive, but certainly an interesting prospect. As I mentioned, wasn't at the top of anybody's lists, but he was mentioned by several members of the worldwide scouting department. Chris Walters is a guy who's expected to go with the 10th pick in the 3rd round. So if we had a 3rd round pick, maybe you could roll the dice and hope he'd be around. Better chance than some of the others that he will be around with our 2nd round selection. I think he can reach the mid to high 90s in terms of his velocity, really good stamina, high work ethic. Potential 4-pitch arsenal. I think his stuff, his movement and control could all be a bit above average. Looking for $1.6 million. He is, as I mentioned, at least according to the mock draft, the first guy that we've talked about who's expected to be around when we pick at the end of the 2nd round, so he could be a interesting fallback option there. Jonathan Wilder, not expected to be around with our next pick, the college junior out of California State University, San Marcos, expected to go 21st in the 2nd round. Like the high adaptability and work ethic, like that he can hopefully reach 100 miles on the radar gun. Potential 4-pitch arsenal, but definitely dominated by the fastball and slider. The curve and the change are not major league quality and barely expected to get there. When all is said and done, though, think that the 21-year-old could have above average stuff and slightly above average control. And then last but not least, Chris Jones, a player who's expected to go with the 15th pick in the 2nd round. So another guy, this is probably our only chance at him. Really kind of interesting prospect. I think he's barely going to reach 90 on the radar gun. Do like the high work ethic he has. Decent stamina, decent at holding on runners. He's not that good in terms of his stuff. We think his fastball, his curve, his change, his sinker, and his splitter are all going to be below average major league pitches. But he's got potentially outstanding control with that finesse pitcher type and potentially really good movement on his pitches. So Chris Jones, kind of your prototypical crafty left-hander, a guy who, if we want him, probably need to take him right now. But there are 5 pitchers out there who ultimately ended up receiving first place votes from members of the Worldwide Scouting Department that we'll talk through next. Anthony Sains was Raymond Effinger's choice, the product out of Kentucky, a left-hander who's durable, high baseball IQ, really good stamina, and outstanding at holding on runners. Think he's going to add another mile or so to the velocity to get in the mid to high 90s, or I guess more accurately remain in the mid to high 90s. Potentially really interesting fastball and sinker to go with a decent change and an acceptable cutter if those both come along. Ultimately think his stuff, his movement and control could all be a bit above average. Sains is not expected to go till the 6th pick in the 3rd round, so he is similar to Chris Walters, who we talked about, a guy who is a bit more likely than most of these other players to be around when we're making our 2nd round selection. Couple who will almost certainly be off the board include R.J. Beckstein, a high school pitcher. He's a choice of Scott Donovan, expected to go with the 12th pick in the 2nd round. Looking for $6 million, so one of the more expensive options out there. Don't love the low baseball IQ, but really like the stamina, really like the potential 5-pitch arsenal, especially with 4 of those pitches potentially being above average major league pitches. Think his stuff, his movement, and his control could all end up above average. And Beckstein is also a guy liked by our scout. James McPherson, another college player out of Point Loma Nazarene University, is expected to go with the 1st pick in the 2nd round, so also probably our only chance to get him here. He is Ian's choice, looking for $1.4 million, so a little below slot for the college player. Mixed personality, do like the high adaptability and work ethic. I think he can get to the low to mid 90s on the radar gun. A rather pedestrian 3-pitch arsenal, so we think his stuff at best is going to be average, but the movement and the control could both be well above average when all is said and done. And the last 2 players, the last 2 pitchers that we're going to talk about were the 2 most popular players with the Worldwide Scouting Department over the last several days as you've been graciously filing your scouting reports with me. The highest potential player on the board, Phil Davidson, the choice of Avery Shaham, Dog Massa, Mitch Fonstock, and Peter Hooper. Davidson clearly has the highest ceiling of anyone that we're going to talk about. The 18-year-old already has a major league fastball. Think that he'll be throwing consistently over 100 miles an hour in Mason Miller territory when all is said and done. High loyalty and adaptability. The stamina is not great. Think that he could potentially peer a devastating changeup with that fastball, but a lot of work to do on that. Ultimately think, though, his stuff, his movement, both going to be exceptional, and his control also has potential to be above average, but a lot more work for him to do there. On top of the fact that he's already got a major league fastball, movement on his pitches is already close to major league quality. Cheetah Davidson, certainly a very intriguing prospect. According to the mock draft, he doesn't go until the 20th pick of the 5th round. So this is a guy who, although our scout loves him, we love him, and the OSA also sees him having crazy ceiling. There is an argument to be made to perhaps try to pick him up in the 2nd round. I think I wouldn't wait till the 4th on a guy like him, just because if we think he's one of the top couple players in this draft, which the Worldwide Scouting Department certainly does, don't want to be too risky, and have seen pitchers generally go a bit earlier than they're sometimes projected in the mock draft. Certainly an argument to take the guy who we think is the best player on the board with our first round pick, but given that he does last till late in the 5th round in the mock draft, there is temptation if we want to try to perhaps maximize the overall class that we're able to acquire to maybe wait on Davidson. And if we did wait on Davidson, the guy that the Worldwide Scouting Department would say to take first would be the starting pitcher, Jeff Colson. He's expected to go with the 6th pick in the 2nd round, so he is expected to be off the board relatively quickly. Like the high leadership and adaptability, the 18-year-old has above average stamina, slightly above average at holding on runners. I think he can get to the high 90s in terms of his velocity. A potential 6-pitch arsenal, with 5 of those 6 pitches, his slider, curve, splitter, cutter, and knuckle curve, all ending up well above average if he reaches his full potential. Also potentially as a changeup in the mix. So we think his stuff could be well above average movement, and average-ish control if everything works out. Colson, as I mentioned, expected to go near the top of the 2nd round, so he'll be off the board most likely if we don't select him now. He is the recommendation of Holdor, Alkshi, Rocket Skarmory, Mitch Fonstock, and Dustin Durbin when all was said and done. So ultimately was the choice of the Worldwide Scouting Department, but just barely over Phil Davidson. And as we talked about, with the possible exceptions of Phil Davidson expected to go in the 5th round, and then Anthony Sains and Chris Walters, who are both pitchers expected to go early in the 3rd round. Everyone else we've talked about is already expected to be off the board or expected to be taken well before our 34th pick in the 2nd round. So I think our hope is the likes of Davidson or those 2 starters end up falling to us in the 2nd round, and perhaps another player or 2 that we've talked about sneaks through. I think I am going to push the envelope on Davidson and hope we get him in the 2nd round. Have to put some value on the mock draft and the fact that according to the mock he doesn't go till late in the 5th round. Could end up paying for that. But we are going to go with the Worldwide Scouting Department consensus view, which is Jeff Colson. A lot to like about him. Think that 5 pitches that could be well above major league average if he fully develops is a very interesting arsenal. Above average movement on his pitchers and average control. Like the high adaptability in terms of his development, like the high leadership in the clubhouse. Think he can reach the high 90s. Guy who's looking for a slot. And as I mentioned, ultimately was the consensus view of the Worldwide Scouting Department. Says his bonus demand is $2.6 million, although slot is $3 million. We're going to try to save a little bit of money at first and just meet his demand right now. As a high schooler, he's not going to be pitching for us this year. So because he's not ready for A-ball and the ACL season is already over and he's not eligible for the DSL season. So if it takes a little bit longer to sign him, not the end of the world. Now the question is whether rolling the dice that Davidson and others would still be available in the 2nd round will work out for us or not. And Phil Davidson is off the board, so he went way earlier than the mock draft expected him to. You can see actually pretty much all of the pitchers that we talked about have come off the board. So certainly did see this year where the pitchers came off early and often compared to their projections. Davidson, a 5th round projection gone. Sains and Walter's third round projections gone, and then less surprisingly, McPherson, Beckstein, Moody, Wilder, and Jones all off the market as well. So take a look at whether the batters, any of the players that we talked about, are available. And not the guys that we specifically talked about, but there are some interesting players out there. Aaron Andrews was a guy who was pretty highly regarded by some members of the worldwide scouting department that I also like a bit, who could be an interesting choice in the second round, although he's looking for tons of money, which I don't love. Take a look at where Davidson ended up going. And he went with the fourth pick in the second round. So again, can't say that that's shocking, but given that the mock had him in the fifth round, probably relied on that a little bit too much. I mean, honestly, with where all of these other pitchers have gone, certainly Colson, who was projected to go with the sixth pick in the second round, would not have been around for us as well in almost every world out there. You can see a lot of these guys came off quickly after we picked. Beckstein with the pick after us, Wilder with a supplemental pick, Lehman with a supplemental pick, and then the likes of Moody, Para, Davidson, Brett Hudson with early picks in the second round. So have to regroup here a bit. We will hope that we're pleased with the development of Colson, and we'll obviously be tracking what Mr. Davidson does over the course of his career and development now that he is a draftee of the Los Angeles Angels organization. And although the pool of pitchers is not as deep as we had hoped it might be for our second round selection, we are going to go with a pitcher here in the second round. Definitely some interesting position players, but this is a year where we're trying to win it all, and we're going to want to save some money to potentially take some contracts on over the next 3 weeks till we get to the trade deadline. So unfortunately, the top position players who are available right now, looking for well over slot. We mentioned Aaron Andrews, interesting looking prospect, and totally get the thought that some of you might want us to take him right now. But with the $6.5 million that he's looking for, that's going to basically put us in a situation where we're going to have to make some moves to the roster just to bring him on board, much less have money left to bring on contracts. Don't think that makes a lot of sense. Matt Kuykendall, another guy who was mentioned by members of the Worldwide Scouting Department, given that he's impossible to sign, not a direction that we're going to go either. Also was intrigued by Aaron Hallquist, looking for $4 million. So he would be a little more palatable, but is not, in my mind, a special enough prospect, despite the interesting nickname Big Game Bob, that we're going to pick him now. Pitcher-wise, a somewhat similar situation. Bill Robeson is a very high-end relief prospect. We didn't talk about him in this episode because we preferred Davidson, but we did talk about him last time around. But he's impossible to sign and has some real negative personality traits, so not a direction that we would go. Mike Odoms, another reliever who's impossible to sign, not going to be in the mix. Danny Sanchez, college reliever who's definitely further along. Don't love the lack of control. Don't like a couple of the personality traits. But he is a guy who we think can reach 100 miles, does have ground ball tendencies. Hooch Sanchez, if he's available in the fourth round, since he's looking for slot, could be a direction that we would go, but not going to be the choice here. Joe Priest, interesting looking high school prospect, potential 4-pitch arsenal, but it's really a fastball and a change along with 2 relatively matte pitches. If that change doesn't develop, I think he's going to have a tough time really being a high-end starter. So we are actually going to go with Jesse Hoffmeister, another high school pitcher, starting pitcher. Don't love the fly ball tendencies for Coors, but he could become trade bait for us down the line. A little older, almost 19 years old. Think he can reach triple digits on the radar gun with outstanding stamina and decent enough at holding on runners. And think that he has got a potential arsenal of 5+ pitches, 4 of which we think could be absolutely outstanding: the fastball, the slider, the sinker, and the splitter. So we think his stuff could be well above average with average-ish movement and control. Not looking for a ton of money. Maybe someone who we end up using more as trade bait than anything else down the line, given those fly ball tendencies. But pretty interesting prospect for a second rounder, and we're going to meet his demand and then see if anyone that we happen to have talked about falls for the next 2 rounds to us in the 4th round. And as we prepare for the 4th round, not surprisingly among the pitchers, the impossible to sign Robeson and Odoms are the 2 highest rated pitchers that are still available. As far as the batters, Farmer, who we didn't talk about, a first baseman who looks like a good contact hitter, nothing else particularly special. And then Hallquist and Kuykendall, who we did talk about last episode with their relatively large demands, are still available. And here in the 4th round, we are finally going to take a position player, and we are finally going to take someone looking for more than slot, but not as much more than slot as some of the guys that we've talked about. We're going to go with the right fielder, Skylar Battenfield. Not the profile that I typically would go for the 18-year-old switch hitter with below average contact and a ton of potential strikeouts, poor defense, and not a lot of speed. But he does have potentially outstanding home run power and eye, and given that we think his contact could ultimately be in the average-ish range, still think for a 4th round selection, he's a interesting hitter to take a flyer on. Nothing really out of the ordinary in terms of his personality that we know. He's a guy who the OSA thinks has even more extreme differences between the home run power and the contact and the avoid strikeouts that we do. So definitely not a perfect prospect, but for a 4th rounder, he's also, $2 to probably $10 million cheaper than the likes of Farmer, Hallquist, and Kuykendall. So a little more economical for us to fit in and still potentially be able to improve this team. In theory, our 1st and 2nd round picks, we've offered them a little less than slot, which helps as well. So we are going to go with Skylar Battenfield here in the 3rd round, or 4th round, our 3rd selection, but our 4th round pick. And in the 5th round, the higher potential, more expensive players did all come off the board. There's a reliever that I'm hoping lasted for us. We'll find out if he did. And he did. So that is positive. Closer Larry Johnston was a guy that we were hoping would fall to us in the 5th round. A really nice personality with high adaptability and work ethic. Think he can reach 100 miles an hour on the radar gun. 2-pitch potential arsenal with a fastball that's already major league quality and a curve that he needs to work on. With 35 stamina, if we got lucky in the development lab in terms of building up his stamina and adding a pitch, could be a potential starter. But we think the right-hander with well above average stuff, average-ish movement and control could be an interesting reliever. He's a guy who the OSA was lower on than our scout, so we were hoping he might fall to the 5th. And Larry Hoke Johnston did end up being around for us with our 5th round pick. So we will go ahead and try to bring the young reliever on board. So the draft is now over. We'll see how we do with the likes of Colson, Hoffmeister, Battenfield, and Johnston, our first four selections. We did pick an impossible to sign guy in the 11th round. Took a flyer on Dustin Hill, some positive personality traits and a bat that looks like it could be useful at the major league level. He's committed to Oklahoma. Can't imagine that his demand is going to be anything that we're close to meeting, but by the time we got to the 11th round, there just wasn't a lot that was that interesting out there. And see as we get to know him better over the next month or two whether there's any chance of us bringing him on board. Tend to think there probably will not be. So turning our attention back to the Major League action in 2032, we've got 8 games left until the All-Star break. On the road at Texas today, going for a sweep, and then we've got 4 on the road against our division rival Arizona Diamondbacks, and then 3 finally back at home, also against the Rangers, before we get to the All-Star break. And when we do get to the All-Star break, we'll have just about 2 weeks left to consider the trade market. So hopefully can continue to play very well here in the month of July. We've lost only 1 game in the month thus far. Over the next 8 days till we get to the All-Star break, and then we'll get to regroup, hopefully from a position of strength. And not a ton of injuries that are going to be different for us. Ian Miller and Dave Seibrecht both out for the year as far as our pitchers. Christian Arguelles we do expect to have back soon. Question is whether we give him a chance to take over for Ted Miller, who's been hitting a little bit better of late, but still not having a dominant rookie season with a 90 WRC plus. Do we bring Arguelles back up? Arguelles has struggled in the majors for us this year, hitting just a .118 and 34 at-bats. But he did have a very solid rookie year for us last season with 27 doubles and 11 homers and 383 at-bats to go with a 274 batting average. And we haven't played quite as well since we checked in, lost the final game against Texas when we were going for a sweep, and we split 2 out of 4 with Arizona in the desert. Back home now, though, and 3 games against Texas. Would certainly hope to take at least 2 out of these 3 at home and go into the All-Star break with a little bit of momentum. Still obviously a very good month here in July. We've only lost 4 games in the month, but unfortunately 3 of those losses have been in our last 5 games. We have gotten a couple of players signed already. Larry Johnston, the relief pitcher who we picked in the 5th round, signed. And then we also got our 2nd round pick, Jesse Hoffmeister, the young starting pitcher, signed as well. So positive developments there. Still waiting to hear on our 1st round pick, Mr. Colson, and the 4th round pick, Skylar Battenfield. And good news, the 1st round pick, Jeff Colson, signed. We got him for a little less than slot, so that was positive. We did have a decent relationship with him. Lost 7-0 to Texas today, so we're going to need to take the final 2 games before the All-Star break to win that series. Kind of struggling a bit of late, which maybe will push us towards making a trade. And although we came back to win 5-1 against Texas in game number 2, lost 10-5 right before the All-Star break, that snapped a long winning streak from Noah Schultz. He was 11-0 to start the year, lost his first decision of the season here in the final game before the All-Star break. So not our best week, a 3-5 record over the 8 games since the draft. But as we sit here on July 19th, getting ready for the All-Star break, of a 14-game lead in the division over the Giants, our 66-30 record, still easily the best in baseball. We are 10.5 games up on the Brewers for the best record in the National League, and at 66-30, we are 7.5 games up on the Detroit Tigers for the best record in all of baseball. So still very well positioned to get this team back into the playoffs, hopefully with home field advantage throughout the playoffs. Youngster Kevin Roberts continues to have a monster year, 254 batting average, but leading the National League with 33 homers and 81 ribbies. And the starting pitching remains outstanding. Newcomers Dylan Jordan, who we picked up in a trade, ranks first in the league in ERA, and Noah Schultz, who we picked up as a free agent, ranks third. Jordan leading the league in wins, Schultz in second, Schultz second in the league in strikeouts, and Schultz and Jordan are now 2 and 3 in the National League in pitcher WAR, behind only Yamamoto of the hated Los Angeles Dodgers. So we'll take a quick look at our team statistics. Even with the worst play of late, we've still got a .647 winning percentage in the month of July. Our 66-30 record is 3 above Pythagorean expectations, so perhaps gotten a bit lucky. The 5-2 record in extra inning games and 14-10 in one-run games may normalize a bit over the course of the rest of the season. The offense very good, second in the National League in runs scored, and in the top 5 in every primary offensive category, except for stolen bases, where we rank middle of the pack, 7th. Runs allowed, the number 1 pitching staff in the National League, first in starters ERA, second in bullpen ERA, top 2 in every primary pitching category, except for BABIP, where we rank 7th. Bases on balls has been an area that we have struggled with both offensively and defensively over the course of this playthrough. So it's definitely gratifying with some of the changes we've made to the roster and trades, free agency, and perhaps most importantly, bringing up players that we have drafted and signed, that we now have the first ranked team as far as batting in terms of drawing walks, and the second-ranked team as far as pitching in terms of limiting walks this year. We are only 11th in defensive efficiency and zone rating, so that's something we may focus on a bit going forward. Certainly would think that we've had some injury issues, particularly in the infield, that have not been ideal in terms of players, and ultimately would love a situation where both Gus Nieves and Ted Miller are not playing the outfield for us. Realistically, the only path there is probably to replace Ted Miller for the time being with Arguelles, which is a decision that we haven't made yet. We did put Arguelles in AAA when he was coming back from that injury, so he's down there right now, but that would be a clear step to potentially improve our outfield defense over the near term. Would be to send Miller down to AAA and bring up Arguelles to play left field for him. Quick look before we finish things off at what options there are there on the trade block. Not that we're limited to the options there. You can see we still, Legacy, have Gus Nieves on the trade block, although given his outstanding performance for us over the years, unlikely that we'll be actively looking to deal him in a year that we are trying to win it all. Colson Cowser and Blake Mitchell are, at least according to our scout, the top-rated position players out there. Mitchell would honestly be a backup catcher for us. With the money he's making, unless the Royals were willing to keep a ton of that contract, not really a realistic ad. Colton Cowser certainly could be better defensively in a corner outfield spot than Ted Miller in particular, but with the amount of outfielders we have in our organization, don't know that it makes sense to really go after him. Gus Nieves, obviously unlikely to lead the league in homers and ribbies this year for a 4th time in 5 seasons with the monster year that Kevin Roberts Jr. is having, but still has 19 homers and 58 ribbies to go with a .284 batting average and a .142 WRC+. So Not as dominant as he's been in 3 of his 4 seasons offensively, but still a very productive season thus far from Pex Nieves for our Colorado Rockies. Taking a look at the top pitchers who are currently on the trade block. A lot of starters out there. Garrett Crochet, Kyle Bradish, Ben Brown, Jacob deGrom, Quinn Matthews, Drew Rasmussen, Spencer Schwellenbach, Senga. So a lot of Joe Whitman as well. So a lot of fairly highly regarded starting pitchers. Some relievers that could certainly be interesting as well. Crochet, definitely the prize of the class, Cy Young Award winner in 2030, 5-time All-Star. He is now with the Minnesota Twins, making a ton of money, and he'll be making a ton of money next year as well, which certainly would make acquiring him a lot trickier. So don't feel like we have to desperately pursue any trades, but certainly I'm going to be investigating our options over the next couple of weeks. And before we finish things off, we'll take a look at the All-Star Prospects game roster, as well as the actual All-Star game roster. Would expect some pretty solid representation from the Rockies organization on both. All-Star game prospects roster. Several of our younger players got some recognition here. Dan Patterson, second-round pick from a year ago, number 20 prospect in baseball, had a 2-3 record with a 5.83 earned run average in his introduction to professional baseball in the ACL this year. So certainly more his potential ceiling that's driving his inclusion here rather than his actual performance on the field. Hendrik Jan van Gorkum, who has been playing in the DSL for us, international free agent signing from a year and a half ago, the number 40 prospect in baseball. He's hitting .306, 7 doubles, 3 triples, and 4 home runs in the DSL for us. So off to a nice start in his career for the 6-foot-tall tactician. And our third member of our farm system in the All-Star Prospects game, Phil Dingwell, first-round supplemental pick, number 25 prospect in baseball out of the 2030 draft, was very productive this year in the ACL, hitting .313 for us with 12 homers and 33 ribbies and 150 at-bats. Really a strong resurgence following a tough introduction to professional baseball for him in 2031. As the ACL season ended, we promoted him to A-ball a little over a week ago, where he's hitting .294 in 17 at-bats for us with 1 home run and 2 doubles in his introduction as a 20-year-old to the California League. Still think he could be a useful outfielder for us down the line if he does reach his full potential. So our top 3 prospects, Patterson, Dingwell, and Van Gorkum, are in the All-Star Prospects game. We do have 2 other top 50 prospects with very important recent draft picks we'll talk about. Brian Stoops, who was our first rounder a year ago, the number 46 prospect in baseball, started this year in high A ball, where he was 2-4 with a 3.45 ERA. 5-1 with a 2.87 ERA in 7 starts in Double-A Hartford. Would certainly think he could be in Triple-A for us before the end of the year, and potentially competing for a spot in our rotation in the not-too-distant future. Dervy Mahez started the year in Double-A, where he hit .302 in 159 at-bats. Recently promoted him to AAA. Unfortunately, he's day-to-day with a knee contusion right now. First-round pick from 2030, hitting .294 in 51 at-bats. He is still likely our third baseman of the future, but as we've talked about, he's been very effective, improving defensively. I think we've had 2 successful defensive programs with him. Outstanding on his infield defense in 2031, and a successful work on his infield defense this past year have really helped improve him to the point where he is certainly a very interesting second base prospect and certainly more than playable at shortstop, although ideally, would like the range to be even higher with that well above average error rating and that outstanding arm. Still a guy who has a lot of options in the infield, and that's the area where we could be using some help. So viewed him as the third baseman of the future for us when we picked him up, but I think there's even more options than that with Mahez going forward. Now a look at the actual All-Star game and how many Colorado Rockies we are going to have. If I could actually click on the actual All-Star game would help. No surprise to see our three top starters all on the team. We already talked about Noah Schultz, 11-1 record with a 2.69 earned run average. Already talked about Dylan Jordan, 12-3 with a league best 2.24 ERA midway through the season. And our homegrown talent, Leo Martinez, 9-4 record with a 2.98 ERA this year and a 3.4 WAR. So the big three of our rotation can definitely match up with anybody in baseball and should have us pretty well positioned, we think, for a run at a repeat this year. Our closer, Wellington Herrera, named an All-Star now for the fourth time, 5-4 record with 21 saves, 3.67 ERA for the 28-year-old left-hander. So 4 Colorado Rockies on the pitching staff for the National League. Turning to the position players, and it is a smaller contingent, only 2 position players, and I don't think the names of those 2 position players are going to surprise anybody. Gus Nieves, who we already talked about, named an All-Star for the 4th time in his 5 major league seasons. 142 WRC plus with those 19 homers and 58 ribbies. And in the least shocking news ever, Kevin Roberts Jr. Having a monster sophomore season, former 5th overall pick, leading the National League with 33 homers and 81 ribbies, 146 WRC plus and a 3.8 WAR, is also now a first-time All-Star after winning both the NLCS and World Series MVP awards as a rookie last year. And with that, we will call it an episode. Thanks again for everyone who shared thoughts on what we should do in the draft. It was definitely helpful to come back from vacation and have a lot of useful input already out there for me to consider as we made our decisions. And hopefully the pace of episodes will get back to a more normal level in the coming days and weeks. Until our next episode, thanks so much for watching and hope you have a great day.